Ross?
You know, this sounds really terrible, but
Move it
all
up.
my relatives are in Indiana.
Switch it.
I love when they,
You know how to pop
I
'em
love
up.
when they get worse weather than
Things in the s- right
we
now.
do.
What they get is ice all the time
Oh,
though,
yeah.
because they always
They
get
get
that
a ton of it.
in-between stuff.
Yeah, I have a brother in Indianapolis, and
Oh,
if they get the least bit of ice, there's 100 cars off the road. They
I'll
have
take
no
this any day of the
concept.
week.
Still too short?
No, it's just a little high, actually. That's good, thank you.
There you go.
You should have put him in the non-rock position, so he's gotta pay attention. Okay, it's seven,
We're on a short one.
7:30, we'll call a Public Health and Safety Committee meeting to order, February 2nd. Happy Groundhog Day. First thing is, will be to pledge the flag.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call a roll, please. Here comes Herb.
Commissioner Richardson,
Here.
Max Bauer,
Here.
Lemkool,
Here.
Inman,
Here.
Henschel,
Here.
Gilman,
Here.
Lees.
Present. Wheelock's excused. Okay. Next item is approval of the minutes from January 5th.
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a correction.
On what
The
page?
minutes.
Huh?
The minutes. My name is spelled wrong twice.
Ooh.
Gee,
Okay.
I don't know that it really matters, but just
Well, yeah.
Oh, it matters.
doesn't hurt my feelings or anything. It's just we have it correct.
You're a double B, huh?
Double B and Henschel is spelled wrong on the abstention of approval of the previous minutes.
who made a motion on the? I thought he
I
did.
second.
Ross.
So we'll,
You guys gotta help me with
That's
that a little
fine.
bit today.
All right,
Okay,
Yeah.
and you got the correction.
yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Minutes stand approved as
we don't have the December 1st close minutes, do we?
public. Huh?
No. All right, we'll just pass them.
We didn't have, those were approved the month before.
Yes, that was a,
Okay.
Chris
That's what I
inadvertently
thought.
left that on.
Yeah. First public comment. Anybody want to comment? If not, we'll close public comment and move to the approval of the agenda. And we have one thing to add, and I put it as, under department action items, I put it as item C, community corrections. Yes.
I have one too, Mr. Chairman, with the board's permission. I'd like to discuss with the board briefly the proposal of a second location possibly for a health department expansion building, and I need to get some advice from the board on that, if that would be okay.
Where do you want to put it?
New business, if that's okay?
Except technically, you're supposed to take action on new business.
Okay, well, wherever you want to put it.
Yeah, put it under number 12.
12?
Sure.
Okay. I may ask you to take action, just so you know.
Well, we can, but
Okay.
technically, under new business, you're supposed to.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with the addition of community corrections as item C under Part 8 and under Part 12, a report on the health department building by the administrator.
Support. Support, please.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Carried. Are there any special orders of business?
No.
Would you read the consent calendar, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such request will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval is approved by a single committee action adopting the consent calendar. Receive and file, Community Corrections Monthly Report, December, Community Corrections Prison Commitment Rate, Community Corrections TASS, THIS, and PRS Utilization Reports, Commission on Aging Monthly Report, Commission on Aging Minutes, January Committees, Community Collaborative Coordinators Report, Metro Fire Year-End Report, Veterans Affair Monthly Report, Veterans Affair 5-Year Statistical Tracking, Veterans Affair Minutes of January 20th, 2011. For approval, declaring PBT surplus for safe harbor use, property room surplus requests, department use of forfeited property, surplus vehicles, Commission on Aging Conflict of Interest notice and approval for the place, Health PAO Animal Rescue Organization agreements.
You've heard the consent calendar. Is there anybody in the public that would like to have anything pulled up? How about our little group?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
Support. Moved, approved, and supported. By roll call vote.
Who was the second?
Please.
Commissioner Max Bauer,
Yes.
Lemkool,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Lees,
Yes.
Richardson,
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yes. Thank you. Number 8, department action item. Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, I'm Nate Elger with the Sheriff's Office. First item we have before you today is a request for a staffing update to replace a deputy with an administrative sergeant within our department. This has been something we've been discussing internally for about a year and a half through our strategic planning. And due to the budget restrictions that we've been faced with over the last 2 years, we have not come to this board and asked for that position. We were going to be asking for an increased number of staffing. We thought that was a little unusual, or would be unusual to do during the past 2 years' financial conditions. So we are coming to you today asking for you to change the staffing look, eliminating a deputy and adding a sergeant. To understand what we're asking, I guess you'd have to know our department fairly intricately. We have a lot of deficiencies that the sheriff and the administrative team has recognized over the past couple of years. Many things have been just overlooked, done haphazardly due to the pace at which the department's moving. Things are getting missed, things are being overlooked. Some things may seem trivial, but when they start falling apart, then the issue starts to become a problem. Things like inventory, training of our officers. We used to have a training coordinator. That training coordinator was eliminated, and we are unable to effectively move officers' training forward and make sure that their certifications that are necessary are being maintained. One example of this is something called standardized field sobriety testing that is required for the Office of Highway Safety and Planning to use their grant funding for OUL enforcement. It's a standardized method of administering field sobriety tests that the courts have recognized. Many of our officers are expired, and technically, if they were challenged in court, that could be an issue if the level of impairment was at issue. So just that's one example that we've come up against recently. We have one officer that's certified to train SFST in-house, but we just haven't made the connection that these officers are expired. Logistical things such as our radios, portable radios, they're going to have to be narrow-banded compliant coming up. They're not right now. We're going to have to find out how many we're going to have to buy. Tracking of MDTs, the error messages that the officers get on a daily basis with the mobile data terminals. Who is going to fix those issues? How are they going to be fixed? And how is the officer going to get those MDTs to who is going to fix them. These are just small issues, but they tend to have a crippling effect within the department. So we're asking that we eliminate one deputy and make an administrative sergeant to take care of some of those tasks. Attached with your agenda item, and I noticed a typo last evening on this agenda item, but I asked Arlene Grockow with HR to do an analysis on what the cost would be with a move from a deputy to a sergeant, and I believe that is attached. She believes that it's going to be about $4,600. That is not taking into consideration any overtime or holiday pay that the officer would receive if they're working holidays. An administrative sergeant would be Monday through Friday. They would not be working weekends, and they more than likely would not be working holidays. They'll follow the administrative calendar. They could fall into an overtime situation if sergeants had an overtime need. They'd fall into what we call an equalization chart, and they would have to work that overtime just like anybody else would. So there is a potential for overtime for that officer. If the officer promoted to sergeant was a defined benefit employee, Ms. Grockow believes that there could be a significant savings due to the contribution levels in the defined benefit plans for sergeants and deputies, and that is also enumerated in there in her attachment. There is a possibility of that. We have just recently tested for sergeant, and there are 4 defined benefit employees out of the 10 that have passed that first stage of testing that are defined benefit. So it is a possibility. I can't promise that, of course. But.
Motion to approve for discussion.
Seconded.
Dennis?
I had a chance to talk with the sheriff at length about this, and one of his goals, I think, is, as Nate said, is to try to improve the overall management and direct attention paid to deputies, so that they're tracking along with the goals and direction of the department. And so I support it from that standpoint. I think, Nate, your plan is to pay this from within the budget.
That's correct.
So there won't be any additional dollars. I did have one question, though, and it's the obvious question. Year after year, you guys come and say we need more deputies on the road, and here we're taking a deputy off the road. And I understand that, well, first of all, in terms of the overtime, is the sheriff committed to not filling, the number of hours here that will be lost on the road by using additional overtime? I'm concerned about that.
No, the road patrol, you're all familiar with the way you're not all familiar. We presented at length during the 2011 budget about the differences between the road patrol and the corrections division. If a corrections officer is off, that position has to be filled with an overtime deputy. The road patrol doesn't quite work that way. There is no minimum staffing on the road patrol. So in this instant, Dennis, the deputy would not necessarily be replaced. The elimination of that deputy, who already does not exist, by the way, this is a vacant position that we have, that position has already been, kind of melded into the big pot, and the shift scheduling has already taken care of some of those issues. The sergeants, when we've put this out for analysis, the sergeants right now are only supervisory on the road patrol. And the number of complaints they take are limited as it is, but they are call takers. But the administrative tasks that they have to do, which includes the payroll and the upkeep of their time data analysis, that takes them from the road patrol, both their supervisory positions as well as their call taking responsibilities. So we believe that the sergeants being freed up out of the office is going to more than offset that loss of that deputy. And we recognize this is a prioritization thing, and we'll come in 2012 and discuss how that worked out for us. I hope it worked out well. Mr. Gilman.
Of the 4 deputies who tested, who are qualified to take that position, would they be inclined to move into the different style of benefits?
Well, they wouldn't have a choice. I think, and I'm not an HR person, but I believe that the level of contribution levels.
I think it's a false sense of savings because what happens is each of our units are assigned a percentage of salary to pay the benefit that's necessary for the defined contribution program of that group. So the sergeants have a different percentage of defined contribution than the deputies. And it would be because there were less that retired over time. You know, it could be a whole number of things. So all that, what Arlene is saying is that in the deputies unit, it might be 40% defined contribution rate, and in the sergeants, it might be 20. But the problem is you take that person out, the liability is still there. It'll end up getting spread across the rest of the deputies, in my opinion. I haven't studied this. But I don't think it's going to result in an actual savings. It will result in that position in a savings, and this year it'll look like a savings, but next year it'll just be respread.
Well, but you can't forget that we're not going to hire a deputy. So we're only.
Well, that's true.
The
He's right
person,
about that.
the person
Yeah.
who's going to be promoted is already being paid a benefit and salary package. We are not going to hire somebody who is already in our staffing plan that would be in another $70,000.
Well, but the thing is, Nate, then that would be a savings of 9%, because everybody new hired is hired at defined
9% in their salary.
defined contribution. 9% of salary.
9% and their salary.
And their salary, of
Right.
course. Yeah,
So that's
of
going to.
course. Yeah.
If I can take a stab at Jason's question, I think this is more about the internal accounting. It doesn't change the liability we have under defined benefit. It's just the way that defined benefit costs are assigned to individual units, which is really not fair because it's an overall liability. So, and that doesn't change.
But it does save the 9% on a new employee. It does save health insurance on an additional employee.
Yeah.
You know, so it will result in some
Right.
savings in that regard.
And the wages and fringes of a brand-new deputy that we are not going to be hiring.
Yeah, but you're using that salary for the sergeant.
But the salary increase is only $4,000. The difference between a sergeant and a deputy is $4,000. We could hire a deputy right now under the current staffing plan and have to pay $60-some thousand.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry, did that answer? The original question, we can't.
The question was more geared towards, are they inclined to take the promotion?
That's a good, I don't know. I've heard positives and negatives about the position. It's a Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 routine. I've heard some sergeants ask questions about it, indicating they have interest in it, and I've heard that some don't want to do it.
It's probably not going to be related to the salary or the benefits. We have a history of that. It's going to be related to the type of job it is, and whether or not they're willing to take a desk job.
Thank you.
I guess, the dollars, are always important, but I think it's really important that we support the sheriff in what they're trying to do, and the training is always a critical piece, and the oversight of making sure this stuff's happening. My question is, we've already set up a shortage of personnel by not providing school liaison officers. How is that working out? I mean, are you being pulled by your regular staff to go into the schools on a regular basis, and has that increased your workload?
It has, and we're still in a period of analysis of that. We're monitoring that. We talk with the schools. If you talk to the schools, they're frustrated about not having a law enforcement officer on scene. We've had some issues where school liaison officers in the schools would have been very valuable, including suspected weapons on campus, narcotics on campus, that the officers are no longer there, and that causes stress. When the officers do involve themselves in schools, it's, as we expected, it's a simple tobacco ticket takes several days to get through, because, so I think what's happening now is people are working that out, trying to figure out how they're going to best deal with that, and sometimes they don't call us when they should. Sometimes, our investigations are not what they should be because we're not involved in the school any longer. I still get calls from the superintendents, assistant superintendents, and asking questions and making comments about the safety of their schools and the way investigations are conducted. So I think we're having a problem. If you talk to our day shift sergeants, they're frustrated because there used to be a system in place to handle school issues, and now there is not a system in place, and there really is not a fix. The fix was, here you go, guys, good luck. And that really doesn't sit well with people who like to live generally a structured existence when they're working. So we're still looking at that.
I guess, I mean, that's, to me, that's a decision that we should be looking at, and so should you. Do we need a desk sergeant, or do we need more to put money into a school liaison officer? And I think, where is our priorities? We as a commissioner, and also you as a administrative person to be able to present to us as to the balance there. And I think we have to look at you to be able to give us that direction as to what our community really needs.
Mr. Lemke, what I believe is we could probably do both. But I'm going to guess that the funding isn't there for that. We could guess just by historical reference that there's always money left over in the personnel line items. I would like to do both. I would like to come to you today and say, please just let us add an administrative sergeant. I know that economically right now that's not practical. So we have fleshed this out. We've looked at it and painted over it for about 1.5 years now. And coming to you today and saying we don't want another deputy, but we want an administrative sergeant, that came at some discussion at the administrative level. And what this is going to do for us is it's going to free up our 6 road patrol sergeants. And those 6 road patrol sergeants are going to be out there more often. They're going to be handling complaints, and they're going to be in direct supervision of their officers and helping them out through those issues. So we're hoping to see the benefit from that.
Well, I just wanted to express my concern about that.
And we have it too.
I also have a meeting with the superintendent on Monday, and I expect that this subject will come up Monday
Good.
when we meet.
Good.
Chris?
I want to take this opportunity to pontificate. In your packets today, we have a report from the fire educator. We pay $88,000 for that program annually. A group of teachers were in a seminar done by the fire educator. And I'm not arguing that it's not a good program. What I'm arguing is whether or not it's a county government function. There was a seminar, and some teachers were in the seminar. And the fire educator, who now has an assistant, by the way, got up and thanked Grand Traverse County for funding all the substitute teachers for the day. I believe that our priority are deputies on the road and properly policed county. And I don't believe our role is everything to everybody else. I think we have to set priorities. So I want you to know, Nate, that I'm going to certainly support your request. But I also hope that this board will take a serious look in next year's budget as to where our priorities are.
Just a clarification for Commissioner Max Bauer. The action taken by the board during budget time prior to year end was the final commitment year for the fire education transfer amount. So they were advised of that. We were advised of that. That was the agreement. So that was just a final year of a multi-year agreement that the previous boards have made. So that isn't even going to be touched in the 2012 budget.
Many years ago, every year I had a fight with Ross over whether that should stay in the budget. Back in those days, it was long before it was put into education. That helped support the office because particularly the rural townships didn't have the money to cover everything. And so I fought for it for years. But now it's reached a point where they had to look for some place to spend it. That's when it went into education, as far as I'm concerned. So, anyone else?
Actually, East Bay, Glen Lila there was posting during the election that he had a fund balance that was pretty sizable, so why don't they fund it? But yeah, the Metro program is serving, I think, three townships out of all of our townships in the county, and I agree that's certainly questionable. And another point, we talk about we have less officers like at the schools or other areas that might be needed, and yet we hesitate to privatize certain functions of our government that would free up money to have those officers. And I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, going back to the liaison officers, it was my feeling when the schools wanted to quit paying is, okay, let them go for a year or so without them. They'll be back. And I think they probably will come back with a handful of money. Because this board was given to them long before the schools did. Anybody else?
I think we have to support the Sheriff's Department's request administratively, and as far as the school liaison officers, it was abundantly clear to me when we had the meeting with Kingsley, TCAPS, and ourselves, that the schools were not willing to cut any functions, Herb, to support the liaison officer. It was like, we don't really need that position. Well, we weren't in a position to take $115,000, which is a minute sum for both those entities, comparing it to the size of their budgets. And if it wasn't any more important to them than that, why should we short our own budget $115,000, which we couldn't afford? And that's why that decision was made. And I think probably this next budget season, we may have a request from the schools maybe to reinstitute that. But the world doesn't stop because there isn't liaison officers in the school. I mean, and the street cops, they don't have the background knowledge that liaison officer did, but they're still able to accomplish the mission. We haven't seen any chaos or anarchy in the schools because September 1 there wasn't any liaison officers there. But we absolutely, I think, need to approve their request for the administrative sergeants. They're the ones that have to accomplish all the administrative duties in the department, and if they need that particular position, I think we need to support them.
I think that was a great program. I hated to see it go away. I had one of the biggies at one of the schools say that they didn't need them, that they'd rather have another principal.
Oh, God.
And they've already got, let's see, when I went to high school, there was one principal. Now they've got one for every grade.
Every one, yeah.
Plus a chief and so, anyway.
I guess my biggest concern about that, and you know, there's two different schools of thought on that as to whether or not the schools think it's important or whether our community thinks it's important. And I kind of on the school of thought that it's a community problem, not a school problem.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, let's go.
Everybody happy? Understand the motion?
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carried.
Thank you. Second item we have before you is the request to purchase vehicles for 2011. We went out for bids, and just like we do every year, we send out letters to local auto vendors as well as vendors we've purchased from in the past. This year we received 3 bid proposals back from Berger Chevrolet, Signature Ford, and Bill Marsh. They returned packets, and we are asking to buy Crown Vics this year.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the purchase of 4 2011 Crown Victorias from Signature Ford for the Sheriff's Department.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Discussion. Larry?
Those front-wheel drives?
No.
Those are rear-wheel drives.
I thought they were going away from that.
They are next year. The Interceptors are coming out in 2011. This is the last.
The Interceptors are what?
The Interceptors are going to be the new Ford police package.
Ford, okay.
They're designed as only a police package. It sits on a Taurus frame, and they're not quite out yet.
And Nate, I had sent you some stuff on a new Chrysler or
New
Dodge?
Chevy Capri.
Yeah.
Oh, a Chevy.
And the Dodge Charger also has their police package. And of the 3, they're all smaller than the Crown Vic.
Yeah.
But the Capri is going to be the largest interior space vehicle.
Just not out yet.
It's just not out yet.
So do the other bids, do those vehicles have front-wheel drive?
The only vehicle that has a front-wheel drive is the Chevrolet Impala. The
Okay.
the Ford Expedition and the Chevy Tahoe are 4x4s.
And you'll recall, we've used it, we had the Chevys before.
We had the Chevy Impalas. We had almost an entire fleet of Chevy Impalas at one point. We had significant front-end problems with those
Maintenance.
vehicles.
And lots of
Yeah.
maintenance
A
problems.
lot of maintenance issues.
And they were much smaller.
Yes. Our maintenance contract provider, D&W, will tell you, give me a Crown Vic, they swear
Yeah.
by them.
Right, and they're a little larger, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Just my only comment is, at some point in time, I think we've, based on our climate up here, we've got to somehow figure out how we can get your department and these road patrol officers front-wheel drive during the winter.
We actually are, if you watch, intermittently we'll purchase Explorers or Expeditions, those four-wheel drives, so we can usually have one or two on a shift. For days like today, we have trucks that can go out and things of that, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Crown Vics, these guys just scream on a day like today when they can't
Yeah,
get.
they're just
man.
spinning, they
They're
can't
spinning.
get any
So you guys would
traction,
rather
or-
have front-wheel drive?
If there was
If they made a
a,
vehicle that was appropriate?
if there was a vehicle that was appropriate, and the Impalas were not a good vehicle, the Ford Tauruses, we had some of those as well a long time ago. Those were good cars, but they're small.
Right.
And when you take somebody who is 6
Big
feet tall
guy,
and you
put him in
cram
the
them
back.
into the back seat, some people don't care about that, but the guy in the back seat cares about that.
Right.
And if that guy's not happy, that's generally relayed to the officer, and sometimes in an unpleasant manner. And really, you should have some accommodating space for these folks that are sitting in the back seat. And the front seat, now you have, it used to be you just had a radio in the front seat and sometimes a passenger. Now you have
a laptop.
a radio and a laptop. Now you're going to have printers in the cars and MDTs that swipe all good stuff, but it just narrows that car
Right.
down.
Besides, it's easier to make a U-turn with the rear-wheel drive.
A lot easier, just a little goose. Not that I'm recommending that, especially in days like
Keep good rubber on them.
And when are you going to start with electric cars?
Yeah.
Please don't.
As soon as everyone else drives electric cars. You got to be able to catch up.
Battery's out, folks.
Lawnmower engine on a bicycle.
An hour and a half recharge.
And this is
Any
budgeted.
other foolishness?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding.
Oh, all in
I'm
favor
sorry.
Aye,
of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
thank you.
Opposed? Unanimous, I guess. Kind of sounded scary. Okay. Motion carries.
It is going to be interesting, and these new Interceptors, they were at the MSA conference this last year, the Dodge Chargers, the Capri, and the Interceptor. We still don't know what the cost on those Interceptors are going to be. If it weren't for them being so small, they would be a perfect police car because they're already designed to have ballistic door panels. The electric circuitry is designed in such a fashion that it handles the load of the MDTs and the radios. Ergonomically, it's set up as a police car, but it sits on a Ford Taurus frame, which makes it pretty tough to start putting that stuff together. And it's unfortunate. Okay. Commander?
Commander, I got a promotion.
Commander?
Morning, I'm Captain Bob Hall, I'm the jail administrator. I'm here this morning to talk about our portable fingerprint equipment at the jail. Back in 2004, 2005, we obtained a grant to purchase a portable fingerprint device for the jail for printing the public for concealed weapons permits, business licenses, insurance licenses, etc. What that did at the time is it freed us up from having to shut down jail operations to bring the public into the booking area of the jail to use the only fingerprinter that we had. We've been notified by our current vendor that they will no longer support this equipment because it is now 5-6 years old, and their expected life is 4 to 5 years old, which is throughout the IT industry, that's average. So we put it into the budget last year, and some of you may recall in our budget conversations that got cut out of the budget. As of April, we no longer have technical support on that piece of equipment. So I talked to Mr. Bott to see if there was any way that we can formulate a presentation to you, which we have done, asking to replace that equipment. The scanner and computer that we use for the portable fingerprinting device is a direct match. Well, it was until we upgraded 2 years ago, the one in the main jail. But it's designed to be a direct match so that if the one in the jail fails, this portable unit could slide right in there, and it's all set up and configured, especially with New World now, to import all the data from the jail booking, and without missing a heartbeat, we can continue doing our jail operations until the other one is repaired. In order to do that, we'd have to stay with the same type of equipment. That's why we're asking for a sole source on this. We're tied in with the same software with the main part of the jail and with our jail management system. There are 3 or 4 major vendors around, and when we first got this price estimate, it was back in May of 2010 for the 2011 budget. Every other vendor was in the $25,000 to $30,000 range. This vendor was 19, and they were going to give us a roughly a $6,449 trade-in on our existing equipment because it's all still with the same vendor. Excuse me. So it dropped the price down to $14,310.93. We put that in the budget, and as I said earlier, we lost it in the budget process, which is understandable, but now we're faced with the prospect of losing our portable fingerprint device, which would mean now we have to go back into the jail with everybody from the public, and that is not a good thing. We have to shut down operation to do that. I put also as a side note to you that this is also used by the probate court juvenile division. When a juvenile enters the juvenile justice system, it doesn't necessarily have to be booked into the jail, but they have to be fingerprinted. This required us to not only shut down the booking operation, we have to provide sight and sound separation from adult inmates in the jail whenever you bring a juvenile into the jail, and that was just horrendous for our operation. We were able to print the juveniles in the lobby, and at the end of the day, we electronically shoot the digital fingerprints and information down to the APHIS down in Lansing. We've also gone and we were able to train several probate court volunteers, probation officers that will come over with the juvenile and actually conduct and do the fingerprints. So that saves the corrections officer having to stop what they're doing and coming out into the jail or outside the jail proper and actually do the fingerprints. And at the end of the day, they transmit the fingerprints in. We transmit the fingerprint data down to Lansing. So I gave you a copy of the cross-match estimate. This is their price quote, and I confirmed with them 3 weeks ago that this still is accurate. The part that didn't really copy real well on yours was a dark blue shaded area with a lot of options and frills and travel cases and things like that that were zero cost because we didn't ask for that anyway, so there's nothing on, you're not missing anything. Then the last page of your packet was from Mr. Bott identifying the line items from the budget adjustments at year-end 2010 that he said would support this project. So we are asking for the board's approval to replace this equipment and upgrade it so we can continue doing the public fingerprints.
I would make a motion that we allow the Sheriff's Department for the jail to purchase the L-Scan 500P portable fingerprint system at a cost of $14,310.93.
Support.
Your support? Discussion. Larry?
Dennis, technically, the 2010 has been closed out or has not been closed out?
Yes, it's closed out.
So,
They're taking this out of the 2011.
so it would just come out of the 2011 contingency, technically?
I just want
Because
to,
it's just going to be a transfer over to the fund balance?
yes.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, this is going to come out of the 2011 corrections budget, right, Bob?
It says 2010. No, there's no money for this in the current 2010 or 2011 jail budget.
So it would have to come out of either contingency or the differential if anything was transferred
It's coming out of personnel.
It appears it's coming out of the personnel. You're talking about decreasing the expenditures on these personnel items here to cover the increase in the equipment.
But that was only for the
Yeah.
2010 budget.
You're right, that is what, it is 2010. But I don't,
Because you've already closed out 2010.
well,
Have you?
I know that we've finished the general fund. I don't know that the whole budget is closed out, but I'm confused by this because I thought Dean
Right.
said we weren't allowed to do these kinds
Well,
of
that's what he
things
told
at
me,
year
too.
end.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have to get you a clarification of it before it goes to the board next week. I think it's fine to go ahead and approve if the board wants to, and I'll get Dean to write up a clarification of how this technically is done.
I think it's just going to come out of contingency.
Well, yeah, unless they haven't closed the books.
Right.
But, no, we had to receive the commodity before the end of the year, so I'm guessing he's going to transfer it out of the contingency or the fund balance from last
Right.
year's budget.
Right.
Yeah, that's from all last year.
I just have a quick question. Captain, when do you generally take, when are you open for fingerprinting business during the week? I have to go over and get my fingerprints
Oh.
for
We have-
Commission on Aging Board, and I just wanted to double check.
Wednesday mornings.
Ah,
and
that's today.
Wednesday evenings.
All right,
Probate court, whenever they show up.
I see.
And,
You know,
Bob, we generate revenue off of this as well.
You know what?
That's the
Last year, we
other thing.
generated in excess of $11,000.
I drive him nuts.
He gets a discount, see?
Yeah, I just thought that was
I see.
important to know. Having this machine allows us to generate revenue.
You're happy, everybody happy?
Yeah.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, the same, motion carries. Thank you.
If I could, just one more minute, we are in the process of transitioning from our old New World, or AS400, to our New World software records management system, jail management system. We're well into a week plus of this now, and it's not been a seamless transition.
Hello. That's putting it nicely.
Yeah, and I know there are several people that have had a lot of issues, but overall, Don and Dispatch, Jamel and Jason, and Brenda Miller-Goki have worked feverishly with these folks to work out most of the problems. And I think with a learning curve, we'll be just fine. But it's unfortunate that you pay that kind of money for something and these bugs can't be worked out in advance, especially when you're dealing with records such as law enforcement records. But just to update you, that is in play, and we'll hopefully, in the next couple of months, be able to say this was a good thing, so.
It sounds like all the staffs have worked to kind of compromise on areas that need to be compromised. You know, it's always difficult when you go from a system that is in-house designed to meet every specific need of the department, and you go to a vendor where you're buying it on the open market, where they have limitations on how much they can adjust. And when you're combining a system that's not only a county system with a jail system, but also with a city system.
Yeah.
So it presented some challenges, I think, but I was really pleased. I talked to Don yesterday, and he said how you guys have been just really cooperative in trying to work through the details of it, and he feels comfortable it'll work out.
Yeah, in some respects, that's because we're a passive hostage, but it's going well. And it's frustrating if, you know.
I was trying to be nice to you.
I know, but we have to be, and we know we have to change.
It
But
will work
it's-
out in the end. It'll be a good
It will.
system.
It's frustrating when my son can Skype somebody on his PSP, and I can't get the software company to change one little thing. But thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Have a good morning, drive safely.
Nate, the general rule of thumb is when you have computer problems, ask an 11-year-old.
Oh, I love it. It's true. Or Rob.
Yeah, or Rob.
Nate, I have a question for you.
Less expense and staffing, let's talk about it.
11-year-olds were cheap, right?
Commission on Aging.
And they're quick.
Commission on Aging.
Good morning, Georgia Durga, Director, Commission on Aging, Grand Traverse. We have a couple action items, and then I don't know the proper procedure, but I wanted to know if I could add one more action item. I believe you got a letter in your packet from Jim McGee, one of our board members, about a conflict of interest issue. It has the Place Inc. on top, so I wanted to talk about that too, but...
We already approved that.
Oh, you did?
Approved it on the
Yeah, we
consent
have
calendar.
approved
It was on
Okay.
the consent calendar.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Our action items, the first item was approval of a truck RFQ, and we also, like the Sheriff Department, put this vehicle out for bid. We wanted a 3/4-ton pickup with a plow for 2011. Bids are sent out in December 2010. We got 5 bids back and also selected Signature Ford at a price of $26,135, which was the lowest bidder, and also there was no local bidder within that 5% range. We were hoping we could, go local, but we couldn't find someone. So yesterday, Commission on Aging Board approved the Signature Ford bid for the Ford 3/4 ton pickup.
What's the desires?
Dennis, does this require our consent?
Yes.
Okay.
I would move that we allow the purchase from Signature Ford of a Ford 3/4 ton truck with plow in the amount of $26,135 by the Commission on Aging, and the $26,135 is the low bid.
Support.
What's it got for a plow on it,
I beg your pardon?
What does it have for a plow?
Let me see if it says in here. 7-foot 6-inch straight blade with smart hitch 2 and joystick control.
It doesn't have the brand?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Georgia, are they delivering this, or is this something we have to spend
Yep.
staff time?
Nope,
Okay.
they're going to
They
deliver it
deliver
here.
Wow.
Waxed and polished and ready to go. All right.
Typically,
so.
they do that for us.
I'd like to note that the Bill Marsh bid was about 6.5% different. It was very close to 5. I would like to see an exception made because of I know what I pay in property taxes in our business, and I'm sure Bill Marsh is paying well into 6 figures of property taxes every single year. And I'd like to see it bought locally, because I think we should have some wiggle room there based on the amount that business is contributing to this county.
I personally would not like to see an exception to our rule unless you want to change the rule.
Yeah, I think the idea of, if the board wants to change the rule, I think that's an appropriate way to go. 5% is generally an accepted number, but there's nothing that says the board can't change that rule. I think the concern would be that if you go over your policy and make one exception and it's 6.5, and the next time it's 7, and then you go over your policy, you know what I mean? I'd rather have you, I agree with the chairman of the committee, I'd rather have you look at the rule and maybe look at changing the rule if you feel it's necessary, so that you can remain
Yeah.
consistent with your policy.
Otherwise, you're going to be doing it on every bid.
But I agree with your comments, Commissioner. I think you're absolutely right. We always want to try to buy local if we can.
Yeah,
And we talk
especially
about
when
that a lot, about buying local, and we try to as much as we can.
Except that Bill Marsh Ford is in Kalkaska County, not Grand
Right.
Traverse.
Yep.
Well, it's part of a company that's here in
Yeah,
Traverse.
they're here too, but.
I think we do need to take a look at the rule. The 5% may be fine. Maybe we should go to 3, maybe we should go to 4, maybe we should go to 8. Prices change. I'd like to see us take a look at some of the bids that we've had when we've involved local vendors over the last several months and see if 5% is appropriate. I agree that if we can give the money, and I will tell you that the Commission on Aging Board had a serious discussion about this in committee. We really do prefer to buy locally because Grand Traverse County taxpayers pay our millage. We really, under the county's purchasing policy, we simply couldn't justify it. But I think it's appropriate to take a look at the policy.
Yeah, and let me say that there's other ways to look at that policy. Right now, it's just a flat 5%. There's nothing that says you couldn't have a tiered policy that says for purchases over this much, it's 4%, and for purchases under this much, it's 8%. Do you know what I mean? You could look at it sort of from a dollar figure instead of just a flat 5%, because it certainly makes a difference on a $20,000 bid and a $100,000 bid.
Are the local vendors, are they aware of our policy, of our 5%? I mean, is it something that when they're preparing these bids, obviously we're talking about it as a matter of public record?
Yep.
But
I don't know, Commissioner, to be honest with you. I think that each purchase is handled by the department with oversight from us. I know that there are some departments that will actually say, you know that we have this 5% differential. And in fact, I know on police vehicles, for example, they know that because they've done it so often. I don't know that we go out there and we advertise it, that it's a 5% differential. I mean, I don't know who would advertise it to. There's a variety of vendors at different times. But it's on our website. Our purchasing policy is there for everybody to see. So I think in most cases where we have repetitive bids year after year, it's common knowledge. I don't know that it is on one-time bids as regularly.
Commissioner Henschel has asked to put on the RM&A committee this month an overview of our bidding process procedure. So maybe we can address that issue at the same time.
That would certainly fall into the category.
Yeah, okay.
Anything else? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Motion carries.
Georgia, do me a favor, give Danny a call and let Danny know he's bringing a bid back, I think, in the next week or two on a vehicle with a plow. And I'd just like him to make sure he sees your bids, okay? Tell him to, just remind him he can look in the packet. I want to make sure, because this looks to be lower than what I recall he was going to be paying. It might be a different vehicle, though, too, okay?
Is there a way for us to tag in and get both of them?
Yeah, typically, if you do a bid, a government bid, we've done this on a number of occasions where building code, for example, would go out and buy vehicles, and the health department perhaps would piggyback on the bid that we already had, and if we can get the same price, we validated a public process, and it's fine to do, and then you can just go ahead and purchase if the vendor is willing to give you the same vehicle at the same price. So, yeah, there is a way to do that.
Okay.
Next item.
Next item is also another bid for our home chore, which is our yard maintenance and snow removal program, equipment maintenance and repairs. We sent out several packets. I can't find the list here of where we sent them. We received only one bid back from Lark Lawn and Garden at $56 per hour shop rate with a 15% discount on parts. And bid packets were sent to Classic Farm Equipment, Ferguson's Lawn Equipment, M&E Service, Strickers Outdoor Power Equipment. We received only one bid back from Lark Lawn and Garden. And I did want to note that we have a conflict of interest with Commissioner Fleece, and I believe he submitted a letter already. I believe it's to Ways and Means. Was what
Georgia,
Chris
how
told
did you
me.
decide who you sent the packets to?
Go through the yellow pages.
Okay.
And since that time, Commissioner Henschel has asked for some information on that, so we've sent that to him, and we can add anyone to our bid list anytime.
Yep.
And encourage people to bid. We have a few people that don't bid anymore, and you can see from our list, because they are never the lowest bidder, and they just don't want to spend the time preparing the packet, so.
And we did put a legal notice in the paper.
Yep, every bid we do, we put a legal notice in the paper.
Well, I would move to recommend awarding the home chore equipment repair and maintenance bid to Lark Lawn and Garden for the year 2011.
Second that.
Supported by Gilman. Discussion?
Georgia, since we don't have any other bids, what was the rate last year?
I don't know, I'm thinking it might be the same.
It was 55 on the hourly rate, and the parts were the same.
Okay,
Parts
thank you.
yeah.
Anyone else? By roll call vote.
Commissioner Lemkool,
Yes.
Inman,
Yes.
Henschel,
Yes.
Gilman,
Yes.
Fleece,
Abstain.
Richardson,
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes.
Chairman Thomas.
Yep. You. Thank you. Anything else?
I just had one announcement to make. Yesterday at Commission on Aging had their regular monthly board meeting, and we presented our outside agency funding. This year, we gave out $52,731 to the following organizations. Area Agency on Aging received $71.31. Catholic Human Services got $10,000 for the Senior Companion Program. Fife Lake Area Senior Center received $1,200 for the senior center activities. Paradise Township and Kingsley area retirees received $1,200 for the Kingsley Senior Center activities. Long Lake Senior Center Group got $1,200 for their senior center activities. Michigan State University Extension received $2,000 for the Project Fresh program. Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency Meals on Wheels received $30,000 for home delivered meals. And the senior center, we agreed to provide them with a $10,000 loan for the outreach coordinator position, because We don't officially have a formal budget yet for the senior center, so although they are collecting money, there's no way for them to spend the money until we get the budget together and approved by the county board. So Commission on Aging is loaning them the funding for that outreach person so we can continue that function. So, and most of those people were there yesterday to receive their grant funds, so.
Georgia, while you're there, would you, if you need this, let me know, would you mention the tax preparation program?
Oh, yeah. Starting in February this month, the Commission on Aging works with AARP, and it's actually AARP's program. They provide volunteers that come into our office and prepare taxes for senior citizens at no charge. They do it online, file online, and they've had special training through AARP, so they are educated in what they're doing. So we're taking appointments right now over the telephone, or they can come in person. Telephone's probably better. And they have to come in during their scheduled appointment because the volunteers are only there certain times of the week. So the appointments are in the Commission on Aging office on Front Street.
Thank you.
And Chris, I also wanted to say we're looking into fingerprinting. Ralph brought up an issue yesterday. We may not have to fingerprint everyone if they've been fingerprinted before, so I just told Jim we're asking people to hold off until we can get that straightened out. We might not have to have.
That's good to know, because I have a CPL, and so I've been fingerprinted.
So Cindy's going to be sending out a letter, but I just want to let you know we might not have to spend all that.
Also, I want to point out that you all received an invitation to be part of the Valentine's Day dance. And we haven't heard from several of you yet. If you would, please call. The dance is from 2 to 4 on February 11th at the Elks Club. And they would like county commissioners to volunteer for the dance.
The gentlemen county commissioners.
Yeah, I don't understand why we're making special exceptions.
Because-
You know, everyone's equal.
Well,
There's way more women there.
That's the first time you haven't had an answer for me. But anyway, several of you have not responded, so please call Kate so we can let her know if you're going to be able to do it.
It's very fun, and the ladies love to dance with the men. It makes their day, so, and it's fun.
it is fun. I've gone
Yeah.
just to take pictures. It's great.
Thanks,
Is
Georgia.
that the
And
senior
eat
center or
food.
the Elks?
It's at the Elks.
2 to 4.
It used to be at the senior center.
Good food.
Okay.
Thanks,
They have
Georgia.
sponsors.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
We have another item,
We have community correction.
community corrections.
Good morning, Greg Summers, Community Corrections Manager. I apologize for the late addition to the agenda. I just received this paperwork from the state this morning. It basically is an amendment to our grant. You've already approved at your last meeting the acceptance of the additional funding. That's specified in this. It's signed by the new director of the Department of Corrections, and it's addresses the required paperwork that I have to send to the state. So I'm asking that be approved. I'm doing that today because if I wait till the next meeting, it'd be 2 months, basically, before I could get the paperwork into the state.
You want to
Any
just summarize what
changes?
it is? It's an amendment to the,
$197,993.
Does it change the amount, Greg?
No, it doesn't change the
It
amount.
doesn't change the amount?
Does it change any of the major components of it?
I don't see where it changes anything, other than it specifies the reporting requirements on my part to the state, mid-year and year-end reports.
And we've
Motion to
already-
approve.
Okay.
Moved and supported? Supported by. My question is, we approve it here, it still has to go to the board, right?
Yeah,
Right.
what I was going to suggest is if you approve it
Ratify.
here and you allow him, the document to be signed and ratified by the board in
Okay.
2 weeks, that's
Would you add
acceptable.
that to your motion?
Okay, that'll be my motion.
so the chairman can consign it after this meeting?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
You, oh, it was him,
Gilman?
okay.
No,
No, Henschel. You agreed to the difference?
R-O-B.
Same to me. Use different voices.
Okay. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same? Pass this down to Gabby.
Gabby.
Let everybody know where it goes.
I thought you meant Chris, I'm not
He'll
kidding.
sign it, you can have it right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Because the
Thank you.
motion was
Thank you.
contingent on passing at the board.
It'll be ratified at the board in 2 weeks. But you-
Okay. See, it was worth sitting there all that time,
Oh, here one, Fred.
listening to all our baloney. Fred's next, huh? Is there any new business? No, old business?
Isn't new
Second
oh, never
public
mind.
comment.
No.
Just sign it. No.
All right, you ready for us?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for allowing us to add this item to the agenda. With the new commissioners meeting with Fred over the last couple of weeks, Herb Lemko brought up the idea that perhaps we should step back for a minute and look at the, was it the Toms?
Tom's.
The Toms that was vacated at the Cherryland Mall as a second option to expanding the existing facility on Garfield for the Health Department. And so we thought that that had potential. There are some immediately clear advantages to looking at that and some disadvantages as well. But until more investigation was done, it certainly had merit to look at. And so Fred and Danny Brown and one of our architects and our engineer Gary Nealis went to the building about a week ago, right, Fred? And did an initial walkthrough. There were no plans available. There's still a lot of questions out there. Right now, the facility is being managed by someone who's doing the plowing in the facility, and there's a rental company out of Bloomfield Hills, and they're, different places. We're trying to get to the bottom of this. And there is evidently some potential to either rent or long-term lease or even purchase that part of the building. We don't have any details of it yet. The issue for the board, though, is, you have approved us several months ago to go ahead with the design and bid spec development for the expansion of the existing health department. That contract, I don't remember what the amount of that contract was. I do. $97,200. And that was going to be paid for by Fred. So far, we've been invoiced $15,077. So we're into that design. And Fred and I talked and said, if the board has an intent to look at something else, we don't want to continue on spending money on a design that may never be used. So we wanted to come have that discussion with you today. For those new commissioners, what we did last time is the county board said, we're going to take this slow and we're going to take it step by step. And the board said, first we want you to do a very preliminary design, evaluate the existing building, see how it could fit, and then put some cost to it and come back and talk to us before we go to the next step of full design. And so the question for you today is, because this building does seem to have potential, it is in, I don't know if it's called receivership or foreclosure, Wells Fargo has it. Because of that, we're asking you, do you want us to continue to move forward with design of the existing facility, or should we stop that at this point and pause it and appropriate some money to do a preliminary design and a budget estimate for this second facility to give you a comparison? And I guess that's the question we have for you. And I'm going to see, Fred, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, we just did this last night, is that, actually, we're into this at about $33,720.
I had bills for $15,000.
And $87,480 is left for the balance of design and development. But most of the work has been on the layout of what each of the programs would be, what clinic space we need. The next part is more of the estimates on both the construction and the refurbishing and the earthwork and all that stuff is where the gets expensive then in that phase of the planning. I went to the site. First of all, is that these people are very difficult to get a hold of. And in summer 2009, we actually thought about doing our flu immunizations there, and I contacted them once. I was able to get a hold of someone once, and asked if they'd send us a copy of a lease agreement so we could lease the storefront, and they didn't. As you remember, we ended up doing the immunizations at the other mall. But that was a limited space, where this had a lot more space. It was about the same rent. So, but when I did kind of break through that, it got the names of the people who's the real estate company that's in control of it, and the company that's heading of the leasing, and they're two different companies, so it's a little pretty confusing. I actually sent an email to both of them, who am I supposed to be talking to? Because I don't know which one. Now, I mean, yeah, Wells Fargo has this thing, and they seem, I think, eager, a motivated seller, I think is what you'd say. I'm not going to talk about any details at a public meeting because they haven't really given me anything for sure, but they gave me some ideas, and I think that it's worth exploring. The thing is that I went to the site and looked at it, and it's a big, I mean, it's 3/4 of an acre open, and so they didn't have any as-built plans, and that's what I've been spending the last several days trying to trace down the plans. Turned out they were in the building. They just didn't know where they were. And so yesterday, Danny Brown picked them up, took them to Repo, had a set made, and then at 9 o'clock today, Ray Kendra is meeting with Danny there to look it over. Because there's issues of like where the sewer connection is, because if you have a clinic, you have to have all these sinks and extra bathrooms, and you have to be able to have enough flow through the building, and there's issues of the roof is apparently still the original roof, and so there's a big expense that's going to have to be taken care of as a repair of that roof. I will say they talked in terms of, we did a lease of maybe some relief on the rental for a period of time to help defray the cost of revamping it. But that's nothing sure. But there haven't been any obvious leaks, and we talked to the maintenance guy with the roof and so forth. So there hasn't been any damages, so I would say. As you can imagine, any grocery store, there's all these walk-in coolers and meat lockers and so forth that would have to be tore out of there. But then the engineer said, yeah, that'll take a day, so that didn't seem to be a major encumbrance to them. The other thing is I just don't know how many square footage, if there's enough square footage. But then again, there's additional other empty stores next door. So I just think that we're kind of at that stage.
I want to clarify. I'm sorry, Commissioner, just real quick. The $33,000 that Fred talked about, I just saw this. That $33,000 we spent includes the $20,000, $24,000 we spent on the preliminary work. So we've spent like I said, $9,700 on this design engineering. There's still 80-some to spend, and we're trying to cut that off, if we're going to move forward with this.
I really think it's one of those things that, I've always felt that the health department's in the wrong location. It's not accessible. I mean, my office was, in that same vicinity, and on a continuous basis, seeing people walk in the road during the wintertime, trying to get up and down through there. The public transportation bus really is difficult to access to it, because you have to get off at Cherryland Mall, then catch another bus that only runs on an hourly basis instead of on a half hour. So, the accessibility, even trying to get into that corner of Garfield and Airport Road is nigh on impossible for somebody that's walking, mainly because of the way it was designed and built. And when I was on my way over to Fred's, I drive by this building, and I'm going, why don't we look at this? It may cost us a few dollars to be able to do it, but if the location is a much better location, then shame on us for not looking at it. So, I was more looking at accessibility than I was at cost, but I really think it's important that we look at the cost too. But it was the accessibility possibility that really intrigued me more about this than anything else.
I'd also had that discussion with you about that. I was here, fortunately, I was here for that meeting that you discussed, the millions of dollars here, or the millions of dollars here as far as expansion or moving up to Lafreniere. I'm kind of excited about this as a possibility, frankly, because for the reasons that Herb gave, accessibility, immediately that's a major advantage to the community. And also, you look at the property that the current building rests on, it is kind of hard to get in and out of there. You see people walking up and down the road on the side to try to get there, and you're somewhat landlocked, and you're going to disrupt your services that you have going on right now while you're doing construction. For all of these reasons now, if I'm not mistaken, the building that's being there, number one, we're also going to, first of all, we're going to be taking away a blight situation. We have an empty building that is likely to remain empty if it isn't utilized. Obviously, if it isn't utilized, it's empty. But but I think it's a great way to look at it, and I think it'd be worth going forward and examine, looking at the possibilities.
I brought this idea up last summer, I believe it was, when we initially talked about the health department. And at the time, it was in foreclosure. Well, now Wells Fargo has foreclosed on that. And if you look at, number one, I would agree with what's been said so far. I mean, that was the thing that really smacked me, was the accessibility of that and the square footage that we could gain by moving there, and the cost would be, in my opinion, significantly less than building where we are and then down the road. And I'm looking ahead perhaps 40, 50 years. And I've had conversations with Fred. My thought is we ought to go in there, and like Fred's talking sewer lines and stuff. When they were building that mall, I did some contract services inside. And all that, when they build a mall like that, it's a shell on the outside and the roof and all that, and it's dirt. And he who buys the space, i.e. like Tom's, they weren't there initially, but they're the ones that put in the plumbing, the floor, and all of that. So as far as the health department needs when it comes to sewer, water lines and all that, that can be easily taken care of. Ogemaw County, and I'm going to sound like a broken record again, but that's exactly what they did. They bought a department store, they put an addition on it. When they got all said and done, they went from a 60-bed facility to a 120-bed facility. No increase in personnel because of the design, all for $6 million. And I think that we seriously ought to instruct Dennis to let's stop and take a look at this situation, and not only maybe for the health department, let's look at Commission on Aging. That building there, and I worked in that building, and the parking is terrible. That building is by far not the most suitable building for Commission on Aging, particularly dealing with the aged people. I think perhaps one-stop shopping that this board has talked about for years, and I think Wells Fargo, Fred said they may be a motivated seller. I'll bet you they're really a motivated seller, because I forget if I remember the legal notice in the paper, it was I think like 60 million. It was a big hunk of change, and we ought to pursue looking at the square footage we would need to say have the total health department there, Commission on Aging, and see what that would cost us. And I think as far as the remodeling to be suitable, the money they've already spent, like Fred said, is really kind of where they're going to place the stuff for this dental clinic. I think 40, 50 years down the road would really make it well worth our while.
Well, I expressed to Dennis the last time we talked about this, because he indicated to the board if anybody had any other thoughts about alternate locations or ideas, please let him know. And I became aware of a dental office on West Rail Drive that was for sale, and my rationale behind having Dennis look into that was that it's a standalone facility, and that if any given time, wherever their method of funding is coming from, dried up or started to shrink over a period of time, that, if that program was no longer utilized by tax dollars, or excuse me, by grant dollars, either from the state or the Fed, that at least we'd have an asset that we can turn around and sell and get our money back. And by expanding at our present location, connected to the present health department, that's not something that we could sell. We're just sitting in an empty building attached to the building we already own. So, looking forward in terms of risk for a program that may or may not continue in the future, I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball about, how the federal government and the state government is going to be handling future budgets. My feeling was that we would be better off looking for a location separate from the current facility if it made economic sense. They did review the first option. Unfortunately, that particular facility was short in terms of the space they needed. But I think if we're at this point right now where we have another contingent possibility, I think we should look into it for those reasons.
I'd like to thank Herb for bringing this up again. And I do remember that Larry brought up, I think you specifically brought up the Tom store last year when we were talking about this. It's really about the accessibility to the public in my mind. But obviously it's going to be a cost thing. How many square feet do you have now, Fred?
They have about 17,000, and then the addition was about 9,000 more.
Okay.
We were told that the Tom store was about 30,700, but the architect that went with me said, no, I don't think they're including X, Y, and Z, and that's why I wanted to see the print. So all this is...
So it might actually be bigger than the 30,000.
Well, maybe not. I mean, I just don't know. That's why we wanted to get the blueprint, so we're working on it, so we know what's going on. But it looks like, I mean, my gut feeling is I think it's big enough for the health department per se. I don't know about the dental clinic, but like I said, there's other empty stores there too.
But your 17,000 square feet includes the dental clinic, right?
Yes. What exists now, yeah.
What exists now, yeah.
I appreciate the idea of the Commission on Aging. I hadn't thought about that. But what I was thinking about is more of the Traverse Health Clinic, as to whether or not they might be able to share that. I think any time we can look at collaboration and into that discussion, I think we need to be opening those doors to be able to look at it. Do we need a motion to make this go forward?
Well, yeah,
or what do you want?
What I would like is, I'd like you to make a motion, consider a motion to have us develop the cost of doing preliminary design and cost estimates on the Tom's building or the Cherryland Mall facility. A big component of this is going to be a financial analysis, which we will probably do in-house.
Okay.
But then what we would do is if you pass that motion, we'll get the cost together and get an estimate and bring it to you before the board so that we can, so you know the number. And also, you might add in that, if you're going to do this, to pause the existing design while we pursue this other alternative.
I will make that motion.
Second.
I'll support it.
Did you get that?
Discussion.
Do you have any idea of a dollar figure just to come up with a cost estimate?
Well, last time when we did it, and we did it a little more extensively, it was $24,000. That was on the health building. I don't think it would be at that level, but we frankly just had our meeting yesterday on this, and we haven't talked with Ray Kendra. But, we may even be able to have a number for you by next week, so you have an idea what the number looks like.
Seems a shell would be a lot easier to
Well,
work with, too.
yeah, there's a lot of us, I agree with everything that's been said so far, and I think this has some real potential for us. But, I want to caution you, a clinic facility is quite a bit different than a regular facility. I mean, in each clinic room, you have to have plumbing, you're going to have lighting, so there are a lot of things, especially for the dental clinic component. We looked at using the building on Lafreniere, for example, and moving those people and using that as a health building. The cost, and when we looked at that years ago, of putting the plumbing and getting it into the existing offices for clinics was just, it was overwhelming. I'm not saying that'll be the case here. We need to investigate it, but there are things that we'll have to look at. The other thing you're going to have to weigh, obviously, is you're going to have potentially 1 or 2 empty buildings that you own, that you've invested, $1 million, $2 million in, I think, at the health department. And we're going to have to look at that aspect of it, too. So I think this has great potential, and access is clearly the number one thing. Space may be the second thing. As soon as Fred heard it, he said, boy, people can get to it, you can drive right up to the door, and the staff is excited about it as well. There are just a lot of things we're going to have to look at, and I hope to have a cost for you next week.
If we're talking to whoever on these costs, and somebody talks to Wells Fargo, I think we should inquire on, say, what their idea of a square footage cost would be.
We are.
And, I think if we got the right negotiator, and thinking about it, the 60 million isn't right. That's 67 million.
That was the other mall.
No, that's Pinnacle, out in Acme Township.
Oh.
Which is in foreclosure right now. It was substantially less than that, but I'm sure you can look up the legal notice in the Record Eagle on that mall.
Well,
and,
I
think it's really affordable.
We're going to get some idea of range of cost, but of course, we may have an advantage here in this situation, to be able to access the building. We're going to have to spend some time looking at the legal documents. I don't know if that's one whole facility. I don't know if the Tom's building can be sectioned off and purchased. We don't know any of that yet. There's a lot of unanswered questions. But what we'll do is when we put the cost estimate together, we'll put in a range and give you a range of what we think that might be, so you get some idea of the
I
cost
definitely
benefit.
do not want us to buy the whole mall. Excuse me, under no conditions.
I'm pretty sure we don't need that.
And extra buildings, and extra
No.
buildings.
I'm pretty sure we don't need that.
Yeah, but Herb, I would
Retail.
disagree with you. If we could pick up the mall just for conversation,
Kmart and
6
Sears
million,
own
we better pick
theirs.
it up.
No,
As far
They do?
as- Yeah, as far as I know, they do, yeah.
So that may be the same case with Tom's, but we'll look
Tom's
into
leased.
it. What's that?
Tom's leased.
Oh.
The reason, I never.
Yeah, they wanted to talk about lease.
Well, they did leave.
That's really
They
what
did
they wanted to
lease.
talk about, but I think we need to look at both options, obviously.
Interesting.
Anything else?
No, they're going to vote.
Do I hear a motion to go home?
We have a
We
motion on
have
the
a motion on
floor.
the floor.
We haven't voted on it.
We got voted on it.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, the same.
Next is, I move we adjourn.
No,
Move to-
no.
Hang on, I got a
I
couple
knew you were
additional
gonna come up with something.
commissioner remarks. I'm Gabby now.
Well, you know,
Okay, Gabby.
I-
my plowing isn't getting done, so.
Oh, I know. Dennis, I want to ask you a question, whether it would be appropriate to put on next month's Public's Health and Safety Committee agenda a couple items. One is, when I went through the Martin Luther King training, which I thought was very well done, there was just a brief overview of some first aid techniques, and then they introduced the AED, that's what they call an AED machine. So my question, I guess, for maybe the next committee meeting would be, because they had promoted a card that had a discount or something for employees if they wanted to sign up for a training program for first aid, get their first aid card, and then there was something else that you would get certified as well on, maybe the AED thing and whatever, is that whether the county would consider annually putting so many employees through the first aid training as a concept, and two, where are we at with the AED machines within the county? Do we have one in every building? Does everybody know where they're at? Would people know how to use them? Should we have them one on every floor in all of our facilities? Those types of questions. So would that be appropriate to put on the agenda?
Well,
Maybe get some thought on it?
Yeah, it really is something the safety committee would address, but I think for sure we could get you, we would get you the information on the locations, the costs, those kinds of things. We can get you that stuff. In terms of the training for using the machines, they require no training.
Right.
It's clearly marked how you use them. They're very simple to use. But in terms of the first aid training. I'll talk that over with Jen, and we can have a discussion about those things at the next meeting if you like.
Okay.
And then, if there's interest on the board, I think it'd be appropriate to send it back to the safety committee for discussion and let them make a recommendation to you.
All right, okay. So I would, without objection, I'd like to add those 2 items on next month's agenda. Okay.
Yesterday at Commission on Aging, I was asked by several commissioners to address a comment that Dennis made at the last board meeting. And I'm going to give the public a little background. I did not vote for the expenditures last month because of a $372 bill for 12 employees to have lunch. First, I want to say I did speak with the department head. The department head clearly saw value in it. Philosophically, I simply disagreed, and we agreed to disagree. When I look at the way the county spends money, I try to view it from my vantage point. Would I spend my own money that way? It's just the way I operate. Clearly, other commissioners may operate differently, and that's perfectly fine. I don't always get it right. Apparently, I approved a $750 expenditure for a life coach for a department. But I do try. At the last meeting, Dennis, you said that Commissioner Max Bauer, Commission on Aging, has a Christmas brunch every year, and you sit on that board. And you are exactly right. However, I view it entirely differently, as do several Commission on Aging board members. We have 14 board members, and to my knowledge, through 2010, only 2 of them accepted per diem and/or mileage. Even if it's 4, when you add up the program committee, which, by the way, for the members of the public, meets monthly to review the effectiveness of our programs, the finance committee, which meets every month to take a look at the way the budget is going, the community relations committee, which meets every month to look at ways that we can reach out to seniors and inform and educate them as to what services we offer. The executive committee. You add all of those committee meetings and the board meetings, and it comes to well over $12,000 a year that those board members give and do not take. They see value in a Christmas brunch. And by the way, we do not spend $31 a head for the Christmas brunch. The cost is approximately $7 to $9 per person. The Commission on Aging Board is also keenly aware that the Commission on Aging employees, and we do invite the employees, are among the lowest paid county employees. They are the only group that is non-union. The Commission on Aging Board values that brunch because it gives them an opportunity to talk one-on-one with the employees. I personally believe that a $500 to $600 expenditure is a fair trade for $12,000 in services.
Christine, I think this last meeting, the figure was $312, and today you said $372.
Actually, it was $372 for the lunch, for 12. And again, it's just a philosophical difference.
Well, I have asked staff, or excuse me, I have asked administration to put on the Resource Administration Committee agenda for this month. I believe it's scheduled for this month to discuss the Martin Luther King Training Day, and with that, just kind of a reaffirmation or discussion about how we handle that, because it has been kind of a general guideline. I don't know if we've got anything in resolution form or anything that, you know, they have the county has so much in a budget for Martin Luther King, the annual training day, and the department, that's their times for the departments to have individual training, as well as for all the county employees to get together and have some general training that we feel is important. So right now, they're basically acting under what they feel would be appropriate in terms of costs, and facilities that may or may not fit at any county building to do some training. And that goes with all the departments in the county. So I've asked that be placed on the agenda for discussion because I guess in all fairness, I think we should just provide some general direction that, yes, it is okay, within your discretion, within your budget item, to select an area or meals or whatever within a certain limit to do your training, and it's on your discretion, or whether the county is going to do something different. So, in all fairness, I think we should have a brief discussion about that.
Just a quick question. What's the, when we travel, what's our lunch allowance?
It depends on where you travel to. It's all based on IRS guidelines. So in different cities, it just depends. It depends on where you're going. Lansing is different than Detroit. Is different
What would
than
be the
Washington.
max?
I think it's
Lunch
like
is
$12.
lunch is $11.
Okay.
Dinner is
In our
$23,
regular,
and breakfast is $7.
yeah.
Except if you eat at my house, it's $100. Anything else?
Yeah, I just got some of the new commissioners are probably getting the same stuff, and the question is who should be going to some of these events and who shouldn't be. One of them is the CRAM meeting coming up at the Elks Club. I think that's for all the commissioners, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we all got invitations.
We all got invitations, so if you are going to go, I think you ought to make reservations to make sure you're going to go. Also, I got a thing from the green breaking ceremony in Acme on the 17th. We probably should, make reservations to do that. And then the other one is the Farm Route to Prosperity Summit that's coming up.
Right.
So I think that, some of those things, it would be imperative that we all kind of try and make those kind of meetings, because they are, record, or, we're really getting into where we're going to go in our community in the future.
Yeah, clarification would be nice on some of that stuff. I'm getting all kinds of emails.
Deluged.
Community I don't know I'm reading Greek as I go here, so I don't know what would be appropriate in a lot of cases. So I don't know if there's some kind of system where we should just email everything to Dennis and say, does this fit? Because I don't know what it is, and especially in
the rule under board rules is that, and this is what we've been basically working with for 20 years, is that if you're invited to a meeting and you feel it is county related, and it would educate you and help educate the board on something that we should know about in the community, then you're allowed to go and charge a per diem.
Yeah, and some of these things, it would be, educational would be finding out that it has nothing to do with the county,
In other words, you can't tell whether it really does or not.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you're supposed to go to what you're assigned to.
No, I mean, we're talking about different other things involved here.
For new commissioners, feel free to call me if you have any questions about that, or the chairman or the vice chairman. But, we don't have any guidelines. We really don't. We've talked about that in the past, about putting some guidelines together, more specific guidelines. But the board has never found that to be an appropriate way to go, because there's so many different things you get invited to. So it is. It's a little bit loose, and I can understand where it'd be difficult for commissioners to know.
And I'm not for limiting what commissioners, if we spend $35 for Herb to go to orientation with the health department, and it gets the ball rolling and leads to saving us $5 million on a building or something over time, it's a pittance to really nitpick every little thing.
Right.
But
I would suggest that either give Dennis or myself a call, and we'll give you an opinion on it. For now.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, I've attended over the years a lot of different functions that you're talking about. And what I've experienced, and it's much to my dismay, is frequently I'm the only county commissioner there. And I don't think that's right. We get an invitation, and I'm not saying you got to attend to everything, but we get invitations because people obviously want to rub elbows with us, talk to us, discuss maybe a point or two.
And frequently, like I said, I'm there or maybe one more, and that's it. And so when you do get these invitations, weigh them. And I'm a busy person. I'm employed full-time, my own business. So when I go to a function like that, it takes away from my business day. And I think that some of us probably should attend a little bit more. And then, of course, there's commissioners that attend a lot of things perhaps that I don't. But I think we all need to make an effort to at least show up for some of the things, because there's a reason. And if you get there like Rob was talking, and it's totally unrelated to the county, well, you know, next time you know better. You like
just
food. Huh? You like the food. I do.
Just a second remark to that, if I may. You know, we all have different walks in life. I mean, some of us are employed by an employer, some of us are self-employed, some are semi-retired, some are retired, and you know, some of us have personal things at home or family or whatever, so that dictate, you know, really how much time and effort we can put into this job, and it varies between commissioners. And you know, I just want to know that we have we understand, we always have had an understanding that, you know, for commissioners that are able to take a certain number of committees versus other commissioners can take more committees because they have the availability and time, especially for these other invitations, those kinds of things. I know there are some conflicts sometimes when we get an invitation, but we have a township meeting instead or whatever. But I just want to let you know, we're trying to do a fair balance here in terms of, you know, everything that we get invited to, what your personal schedule is, your work life, those kinds of things. And you just do the best you can. And if you can't make some of these meetings, you just can't make it. So what's important is if we get somebody there that we think that's important, that they can bring back and make a report to us. So,
Larry, I think we also have to look at the MAC meetings as to who's going to go and what, you know, what we're expecting out of that, because that's coming up.
Yeah, Katie's getting that together here pretty quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? You know, regarding Herb's comment on the MAC meetings, I've attended a couple of them in the last 4 years, and I've found them to be very beneficial. And I was commenting, I believe, to the two new commissioners a week ago or so, that they might want to take a look at that brochure, and they've got the sessions that you can pick and choose. And I've always found it pretty helpful, and I think, if memory serves me correct, the only one I've ever run into down there is Larry Inman. I don't recall seeing anybody else.
He likes the food, too.
Well, move we adjourn.
Yeah, all right, second.
Aye.
Aye.
Say goodbye, Dickie.
Thank you, everyone.